And I am live. And as continue to screw this up, okay, I am live. Welcome to Authority the Video Cast. And today's topic, if I could quit making subtle, God, today's video is it's about Les Miles. And dang it, you guys, can I just start over? After yesterday's show, I feel an immense amount of pressure to not be as horrible as I was yesterday, because yesterday I just had too much. It was just too much. I thought I could talk about Kevin Durant, and then when it came down to the most important parts of Kevin Durant's career, I wasn't paying attention because as I had talked before, that era of the NBA just really, it just took something out of me as an NBA fan. And so trying to talk about Kevin Durant and this just having this whole section of his career not fresh in my mind, it was probably a mistake. So I apologize. Something absolutely fresh in my mind. Do you guys remember when we were talking about Cade Cunningham a couple weeks ago? I think it was a couple weeks ago. And I was talking about that kid from Oregon State. It was a huge moment for Oregon State. It's the most relevant Oregon State basketball has been since Gary Payton was there. And I'm not even sure how much success as a team the Oregon State Beavers had when Gary Payton was there. I just know that they produced Gary Payton, an all-time great NBA player. So that, to me, that's the last time they've really been relevant. And Oregon State had an absolutely incredible tournament. They knocked out the tournament's biggest star, and in that, their point guard had a star-making performance of his own. But despite it being all roses and you'd think good times for Oregon State, their president just resigned. And their president just resigned for something fully to do with athletics. That's the crazy part. Usually when university presidents are forced to resign, it's due to an admissions or an academic scandal, sometimes athletically. But I think the last university president that I knew that had to walk away from their job as a result of something going on at the university, maybe it was Maryland when that football player died at their practice. Maybe. If not, it was Baylor, and we all know what happened at Baylor. For any of you going, you'll meet Art Briles in hell. We all know about the Baylor situation. To me, that was the last time a university president resigned over an athletic scandal. But Oregon State's president resigned over Les Miles. Les Miles has never been to Oregon State. He's been to Oklahoma State, the other OSU. But of the three OSUs, that's not the one that Les Miles has ever coached at. He's never coached at Oregon State. Well, that's how deep and how wide the net has been cast from this Les Miles thing. If you Google Les Miles fallout, the first story that comes up is from Inside High Red. Couldn't tell you who they were. But Oregon State University president resigns. More fallout in Les Miles situation as Oregon State's president resigns. Kansas splits from its AD. So if we're keeping up, I think Kansas's AD was fired for hiring him at Kansas, Les Miles. Oregon State's president resigned because he was somewhere. I think he was at LSU, and I'm not quite sure if the people at LSU. Yeah, see, Oregon State's president had worked previously at LSU, so I'm not sure if as the president or as a lower position, but basically, 2 years ago, everyone was all excited, like, oh, Les Miles is going to bring Kansas football. He's going to bring Kansas football into the 21st century. And I mean, obviously we get that he's really having a PR nightmare for himself. And rightfully so. I mean, this guy has 2 college-age daughters. And if you watch the ESPN Plus series that they did on Les Miles in Kansas football, Les Miles looks like he has a really good relationship with his daughters. And it really sold me on just how good of a family man he was. So maybe Les Miles just had the wool pulled over everyone's eyes. But the thing is, off the field stuff aside, he was not doing well at Kansas. You could argue he was in over his head. 3-9 and 0-9. He went 1-16 in Big 12 play. 1-16 in Big 12. So you could argue that Kansas had already made a mistake with the hire just based on what was going on the field. They 1-16 in the Big 12. That's not getting it done. And they showed signs his first year there. They showed signs of putting in an offense. They had a lot of coaching changes, and they were trying to get the right system in. I think they fired their offensive coordinator like a few games into Les Miles' first season. They were trying to bring up this guy, a real young guy with a lot of ideas, and he was running run-pass option stuff, I believe, that was really working for Kansas. But they didn't have a quarterback. I don't think they necessarily had the quarterback, especially this year. They had a quarterback who was like a journeyman senior last year who really he almost, you could argue, he blew up under the new play calling. Like he really found success halfway through the season once they changed offensive coordinators. But then Kansas just didn't have the quarterback this year to continue to develop that offense. But yeah, Les Miles has gotten a lot of people in trouble. And then the news today was that an LSU associate athletic director. Okay, I mean, that's a real job title. I mean, this wasn't some lowly like intern or whatever. This was an associate athletic director from the Washington Post. Let's just go ahead and pull it up. She filed a $50 million lawsuit. I don't know if it names both Les Miles and LSU who directed, but it is a $50 million lawsuit over Les Miles allegations. I believe it's towards LSU. She alleges that she endured a hostile work environment and was retaliated against for trying to report allegations of sexual harassment by former football coach Les Miles. And it doesn't just start or stop with the sexual allegations of, I mean, just read into it. It's, the guy basically used his position of power, like many have, to, be creepy and old. I mean, it wasn't like Matt Lauer where he had a button on his desk where he could trap women in his office. But when you're in a position like that, like you have a certain set of responsibilities. And for me personally, I'm someone that's trying to get into this business. I'm someone that's trying to work within college athletics. And it's just troubling to see that such a high-profile athletic program like LSU was being run like this. It's hard. The details aren't coming right up for me to read off to you, but it's just, I've been tracking this story for several weeks, and you just go look it up. I mean, it's pretty alarming. He said that, and again, as I want to get a job in this sort of field, he was going around saying that there wasn't enough. Basically, there wasn't enough attractive blonde women, and he was complaining that there was too many black people in the athletics department. I don't know if it was specifically black women, but he had already made a comment how they needed more blonde girls in the program. Just, stuff you wouldn't think you would hear from a guy who has college-age daughters. That, I should be concerned about getting home and spending time with my family and my daughters, but actually, while I'm at work, can we have more sexually attractive, blonde, voluptuous girls in our athletic department? It's almost uncomfortable for me to talk about. Like, again, like I feel very close to like a situation. I feel very conflicted because I want to do this for a profession, but I mean, this kind of stuff is everywhere, folks. It's not like, oh, I'm not going to become a I'm not going to do what I wanted to do because I'm afraid of the toxic environment. This sort of stuff is everywhere. It's alarming that in 2021 that a place like LSU would have been fighting because I guess it had already happened, right? Like Les Miles had came and went. But if you know about this stuff, and then Kansas is like where during the hiring process for Kansas and Jeff Long, who was fired as the Kansas AD, did he not get a hold of anyone at LSU and then say, hey, because apparently Jeff Long had been with Les Miles at Oklahoma State before he got to LSU. So who knows what, Les Miles was a younger guy. I don't know. He probably had some young kids. Maybe he wasn't up to his creepy old man gimmick yet or whatever. But certainly at LSU, he was doing stuff that was very questionable, inviting girls alone into his car and telling him that he can take them back to his place off campus, and just really weird. And actually in the ESPN Plus, and this was like the one red flag, and there was nothing to be concerned about at the time. I was just watching a documentary about, Kansas and if Les Miles could resurrect their football program. But this was like probably 2 years after he'd been let go from LSU. He still had an apartment or a condo completely to himself, separate from his family, just outside campus for him to do what with? Maybe he had some sort of like, oh, he's a liaison to the athletic department. But really, like, why, when you have a family and you're not working full time for the university as the head football coach, why did he need to continue to uphold a separate address to do weird stuff like what he had been doing when he was the coach at LSU, apparently? So I've been tracking this story, and now it comes out today that there's a $50 million lawsuit, and it's not that they did a poor job of letting this guy run roughshod over their program, but then they tried to silence people. An associate athletic director? I mean, again, like, that's not necessarily a subordinate of Les Miles. If they're parallel, if not like associate AD, I mean, just because the football coach makes more at LSU, I mean, Les Miles still has people he had to answer to at LSU. And maybe not directly this associate athletic director, but it's shocking. It's shocking. When you think about some of the more horrific scandals that have gone on specific to college athletics and in more specific college football, there just doesn't seem like there's a place for this whatsoever. There wasn't a place for it. And especially now, and I think that's why the fallout has just been so wide, because it can't just be that Les Miles answers for this. It can't be. Yes, he was the one perpetrating these actions. He was the one who was completely in the wrong. But to me, someone that watches someone over time repeatedly do the wrong thing and say nothing about it, they're just as guilty. Now, what the structure at LSU must have been like for an associate AD to just be totally silenced like that. It's really, really shocking. Wow. LSU leadership, its board of supervisors, the athletic committee for the board, along with Taylor Porter, conspired and organized around working around Title IX and its compliance. An attorney representing Lewis, who is the one doing the accusations, they worked around the investigative and requirements under Title IX and the requirements for protection of those reported. So, yeah, I mean, now they've tied themselves up in Title IX stuff. Ay. This has been going on for years. Just read into it. There's nothing I can tell. And, as I'm live, it's hard I should have probably collected some of this stuff for you guys to really lay it out there. But this one's on you. if you really want to know more about how ridiculous this Les Miles situation is, go and do some reading. Honestly, like we all need to do more reading, right? Stop listening to people like me, although don't obviously continue to listen and cling to every word I say, but go and read something as well. Read a bunch of stuff. I mean, this story has legs for days. It won't die. And now with the $50 million lawsuit, this should the Deshaun Watson is just a whole nother can of worms that I've thought about addressing several times, but I'm not even sure what the heck's going on. I really don't. I'm not even comfortable to like start even talking about what's going on, because honestly, at first when the cases when there's like a couple cases, I legitimately thought that the Houston organization was putting out like slanderous material to keep Deshaun Watson in Houston, to keep teams from wanting to trade for him. I legitimately thought that. But now that we're at like 20 some like accusations, Deshaun Watson, what is going on? But yeah, the Les Miles situation it's something. And it's funny too, because I've mentioned here on the channel before how I didn't think that we were going to get Mid-American Conference football this year in any respect. So I thought I had to maybe adopt a new team because I wouldn't have BGSU football. And I adopted Kansas. And what a mistake. 1-16 in the Big 12. And now a former national championship head coach who has not only disgraced himself, but now he's uncovered a bevy of people who need to be relieved of their duties one way or the other. And they've started to be. Just insane stuff. We'll see what else this new lawsuit uncovers, but it seems like, you know, when you're LSU, you're one of, I will throw LSU in with one of maybe 5 schools that regardless, they print money. And I think the scandal they had, the FBI wiretap scandal they had with their basketball team, is almost an indictment of that. They have money, people, to cash money to give to young student athletes to convince them to come. I think it was something like $50,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, that's a year and a half tuition. So in cash. So LSU is one of those schools, along with Texas, Ohio State, USC, fourth one, North Carolina, maybe. There's 5 schools that no matter what, they print money athletically throughout the year. Now with COVID, that's changed, but $50 million lawsuit, that will really create some headaches inside the LSU athletic department. And quite honestly, they deserve it. The way that they ran their program, the way that they made people feel, and I'm again, I want to work in this field, and to think that, oh, well, you're not sexy or blonde enough, so get the heck out. I'm sexy and I'm blonde, but just not enough of either, I guess. So it shouldn't even be joked about. It's terrible. But you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll do something a little more lighthearted tomorrow, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.